Welcome back to our live training session. In this tutorial, we're going to be focusing on how to tune our drivability portion of the calibrating and tuning process. So this is going to be going from economy to best drivability and even transitioning a little bit into optimal power, making sure that we have everything in order. We don't have any large IPC wheel torque errors that can definitely cause us some problems and cause us to go into a throttle shutdown mode. We want to make sure that our fuel trims look good as we're on throttle, even transitioning into full throttle. Now, we're not going to focus on doing any full throttle pulls yet. The next tutorial will be dedicated to wide open throttle tuning and getting that all sorted out. This is going to be sorting out all of our drivability and again, making sure that fuel trims are good and we don't have IPC wheel torque errors that's typically going to be generated in our part throttle operation. So let's jump in here. We have a new file. So it's the same file we're working with in the last tutorial, but I've saved it as a new name. This, I'm going to be calling it Cruise Tuning, and that's saved to the training course folder. So our 2017 ESS Live subfolder in our training course main folder. So this is the same file that we were doing all of our calibrating and tuning, just new name. Now let's jump in here to engine and let's talk about what we can expect before we even fire up our engine to start to drive it here on the chassis dyno. If we go to airflow, we go over here to variable camshaft, we're going to find that we have our distance tables calling out the drivability and economy. This is going to be our simplified VCT schedule. We can actually move into our Excel spreadsheet here, and let's jump in here to our VCT schedule. I've copied the VCT schedule in here. So this is our custom schedule. This is our distance tables, and this is going to be what it calls out for cam pairing. So looking here, the economy is going to be operating 20, 30 degrees retard on the intake, and then we're going to be transitioning here again to about 30 degrees on the exhaust. So we're putting our cams in a more optimal retard position so we get decent economy in cruising. Then moving over to drivability, we go here, put our cams at 20 and 30, transition them over here to 0 and 15. This is going to be starting to put our cams further towards where they need to be for optimal power. We're going to look at that transition between drivability and optimal power towards the end of the tutorial, but we can expect to see that we're going to be operating essentially in our map points. Looking here, we're calling out 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 2, 3, 4, and 5 would correlate to 15, 17, 18, and 19. This is going to be what we can expect to see for our cam pairing movement going through those mapped points. Now let's jump into our scanner real quick, and I want to talk about a specific page or a specific chart versus layout that we can see what's going on here with our variable cam schedule. So moving in here, in our new Gen 2 course layout that I provided, we're going to go in here to our third chart versus time, and if you scoot this all the way up, you're going to notice that we have a whole bunch of data and information here, and we're specifically populating data here for MP 14 through 21. We can actually see how we're moving through the schedule. We can see right here, I gave a little bit of blip of throttle. We can see how it's going through the weighting factor here graphically. This is also going to let us see what's going on with the spark timing, as well as some other basic information here, exhaust cam movement, how everything is going to be working. So we're going to be taking a look at this, verifying how it's moving through the scheduling. We're also going to be looking at, in this tutorial, this last chart versus time. This is going to be the key to dialing in, or I should say dialing out, IPC wheel torque errors. We're going to specifically take a look at the relationship between engine brake torque, scheduled torque, and ECT torque request. This is what drives the IPC system, and I have figured out a way to actually properly calibrate and tune this so that we eliminate IPC errors here, which is definitely something that is not ideal. So we have a lot of work cut out for us. Let's go in and, jumping back in here, let's go in here, let's close this out. We flashed the file already in that last training module. So now it should just be a matter of starting up our engine and starting to take a look at doing the drivability. Now, one other thing I want to talk about before we actually do that driving and taking a look at our fuel trims, that's the first thing we want to sort out. If we jump airflow general and going in here to our MAF calibration area, we currently have our MAF adaptation, cylinder air filter, cylinder air anticipation, initialization switch, and idle switch all disabled. Everything's turned off here. We're riding on the pure or raw MAF signal. Now this is what we need to verify MAF operation. We may need to touch up the MAF table, but we're going to try to dial in the high slope to clean up any higher end or upper airflow correlation or deviations in our mass airflow versus period. Now, ESS has supplied this particular period table for their kit, so I'm going to assume that it's going to be relatively close and a great starting point. So far at idle, it seemed good. We did have to tweak and adjust our forward racing 47-pound injector data, and I have had to do that in the past, so it's not going to be something super uncommon or odd. We might have to tweak the high slope. So we adjusted the low slope. We might now need to go after the high slope. And then after we've adjusted things, we're gonna go do any further cleanup in the actual MAF table. Usually it should only be a couple % of adjustment that we need to make sure that things are in order. Once we have verified that the high slope is good, the fuel trims are good, as we're rolling into throttle and kind of going back and forth, making sure that the MAF curve looks pretty solid, we'll then come back in here and we'll turn everything back on again. And then we're going to evaluate looking at any IPC wheel torque errors that are left. One thing I want to point out is that the fact that we have the filtering off here can create some problems for us, specifically if we're looking at a data log or looking at our data live and we're watching our spark source. This is something I've noticed. Normally it's going to be showing either borderline or MBT in the operation. With that filter off, you may find it cycling in with tip-in detonation. What that means is it's not actually detonating, it's meaning that it's going into the tip-in retard tables. What's happening is when you turn the filter off, a lot of times the mass airflow sensor is jumpy or bouncy, it's not smooth. So as a result, there's a delta load table. Let's look at this real quick. There's a delta load table that's actually getting triggered, which is getting the ignition retard getting triggered. It's our delta load enable here. This is set relatively low, and normally this is not a problem. However, when you turn the filter off on the MAF to do the tuning, this table here can get triggered, which then triggers the tip-in retard, and it's gonna show that as the spark source because that's getting triggered. And
thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.